welcome back to another episode of Community Tales, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time reflecting and looking back at what happened this month in the community. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I love talking about cons.
He loves talking about cons.
I do.
Oh,
God help me, I do.
Right. And so it feels like we're getting a lot of traction out of the Con of the Rings this year, but the three of us
we're riding that puppy all the way to Mount Doom.
Yeah, we really haven't had much of a chance to sit down and like decompress after the con. Like everything that we've put out 2 shows since the con, and most of it was just stuff that we were recording at the con. You know, so it's been about a week now since the con ended, and so for those who don't know, the Con of the Rings. So we wanted to just kind of get together and talk about it and tell Grant that he's got to get there next year because it's just a phenomenal experience. But
we missed you, Grant. We did.
We always miss Grant. But before we get into con decompression, I wanted to take a minute and thank our patrons. So at the con, we met some of our patrons, and believe it or not, we got another patron that just started this month. And so all our patrons are eligible to win swag at next year's Con of the Rings. So I've decided to do swag for next year's Con of the Rings. So if you're interested in supporting us, follow along, go to patreon.com/cardtalk2018 and donate anything from 1 penny all the way up to $1 million per month. And you can support us do exactly what we love to do. So
yes, thank you very much for everyone's continued support so we can keep talking about cards.
So Ted, this is like the first time we've had a chance to sit down and talk. And Grant, you get to ask us all sorts of questions because I wasn't really in a good place to answer questions when we talked at the con. So I don't know, Ted, what do you got for us here?
Well, yeah, Con of the Rings 2019. It was the second annual, and a piece of news. I believe it's been announced that it's going to be on for 2020 as well. I believe that was confirmed
on Twitter and Facebook at the end. Beginning of last week.
Yeah, so that's already kind of worked out. So this is my first year attending. I didn't get to go the prior year, but I just really love conventions.
And you love talking about them too.
I really love talking about them, and it's so great because this community is so wonderful. All the people we meet, and you get a chance to just meet them in person. It's the first time I got to meet David in person. Actually, we got to sit down and play cards.
Yes, we got to actually play.
Amazing.
This was wild. All these cards that we talk about, we actually got to play them a little bit.
Yeah,
so that's good.
And it's you're there, and everyone there is like-minded. They're there to play and have a good time. So it fills me with a lot of positive energy, to be at a place like that.
Yeah. And I totally agree. Like it's really interesting to be at the Con of the Rings because it's a cooperative game. So when people stand up and cheer, it's usually a group of people that are standing up and cheering, and it's not like a competitive, like, what the heck are you doing? I can't believe you did that to me. That's like I was recording and I saw you guys playing 4-player. Ted, you were playing with 3 other people. I think one of them was my buddy Chris, and maybe Bob and Chrissy, I don't know, whoever it was, and
some folks.
You guys stood up and gave each other high fives. You were
because
yes!
We were in the middle of doing Siege of Anuminas 4-player,
okay,
which is a giant pain of a quest to do, and we defeated it. We were doing very well. I was so proud. All the players in my group of our team, we were having a good time.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think that I don't know, just that's what I loved about the con is just hanging out with people playing the game that I loved. But maybe some of the details I should go into. Ted and I. Funny thing is we took two different modes of transport to get to the con, right? Ted, you drove with some friends, and I flew all by myself, and we managed to make it to the airport or make it to the hotel within 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah, that was astounding. That's just like one of the odds.
Yeah, without even planning it out. Like neither of us knew each other's itinerary, and we just showed up. I waited in the lobby for about 3 minutes, and there's Ted. And Ted, I learned that you're a hugger.
Yes, very much so.
And you're also taller than I thought.
You're also taller than I thought. Which makes me wonder how tall Grant is.
Right.
That's what I'm wondering. So, Grant, that day's coming. Don't worry either. You're coming here or we're going there for like tea or something. I don't know.
For tea.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, and either way, we'll probably put out an episode whilst we're all together.
Yeah, a whole live episode. Everybody recording live. Well, how tall are you, Grant?
Nearly 6 foot.
I was about to say you must probably do that in meters, right?
Yeah, I'm just over 5'11".
Okay. So he's our height, Grant or Ted. He's our height.
right in our wheelhouse.
Right in our hugging wheelhouse.
Exactly.
How do you feel about hugs, Grant? How do you feel about hugs?
I'll let you find that one out when we're.
Oh, jeez. So all of a sudden I get a black eye at some meeting because somebody's going to end up punching me. Anyways.
When you got there, David, there were already... What was going on in the lobby?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, Splice, Christian, I think his real name is sitting there playing 4-player or something or other in the lobby with a bunch of people. So that, I mean, it was pretty wild. And so
yeah, right. That's the kind of mode. That's actually as much. I love being at the conventions, of course, but no matter which one you go to, there's always the like day before and day after, and that involves like just games in the hotel lobby. And those games I love even more than at the convention.
Which I guess the first story that reminds me of that is that you and I went to Caleb's house for the podcast barbecue or something. I don't know, whatever.
Mount Doom barbecue,
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah. And
clever name.
Just so everybody knows, don't let the Cardboard of the Rings guys fool you. Caleb is a good cook. He had some good brats on the grill that were pretty good. So don't listen to those guys.
He was quite the gracious host.
He was a Caleb gracious host. And I'm sure that's a joke he's never heard ever in his life.
Ever in his life, yeah.
Right.
And I bet he won't like to hear it ever again.
Right. All of a sudden, I'm not invited next year. Ted, you are, and Grant, you are, but I'm not. No, but we had a good time. I think I talked a little bit about this with him on the reflection show that we did, but
right, yeah, because he sat down with you guys.
Yeah,
for a while,
we played. You guys were downstairs playing some sort of board game, and then upstairs, I got really nervous because he broke out a Star Trek game, and I was like, oh no, this is a 2-time world champion Star Trek player, and I'm going to be playing Star Trek with him. But it wasn't that same, it wasn't that same game, so I was fortunate enough to not have to worry about that. There was some sort of deck building game, but the lead in to this about all this, it's the barbecue is really nice, and Caleb and his family is super nice. He's got one of the nicest wives I've ever met in my life. She's just so gracious and so nice. So that was really nice to meet her too. But then, I don't know, Ted, we left. We took an Uber back to the hotel, right? Like you call it an Uber or Lyft, whatever, some sort of ride share
form of transportation.
Yeah. And we were exhausted because this was like we just got in at 1:00 the previous day, the previous night, and then
right.
And I guess both of us got our second win because we looked at each other and said, "Want to play?" And you were like, Yeah. So we threw the cards down in the lobby of the hotel at midnight. And I called my buddy who was up in the room, and I'm like, Chris, get your butt down here. We're going to play. And he was like, sure, no problem. He got down there, and we played. I don't even know what we played.
We did 3-player. Yeah, it was 3-player Weathered Hills, and we didn't win.
Right.
And I was surprised because I really like that quest, especially multiplayer. I'll play that one 3 to 4 player a lot because usually I can defeat it, but we were pretty, I don't know, con lagged at that point, and maybe we weren't doing so well.
And that was after the first day of the con. So, like,
yeah,
my buddy who never played the game much before this was like on overload about the game. So but he picked it up pretty quick, I guess. He's played by himself before, but that's, I don't know.
Yeah, what's really great about the conventions is you see people of all player levels. You get new people that have just picked up like the core set and a couple packs, but have decided to come to the convention because maybe they know someone and just want to show up. And then you have all the veterans, kind of like us. Then you have all the other people in the community, like the other podcasters and stuff, and they're all there because they just want to play and have a good time, and everyone's there.
Yeah. So, who did you end up playing with? I mean, obviously, you and I played several games together. I would say 75% of the time you and I were playing games together at the con.
Yeah. I got up to play a couple games with the friends that I had come up with because I don't play with them much too often. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that were that I see at the conventions. It's like the same dedicated people that like go to Gen Con usually. And I'm all like, hey guys, it's been a couple months. Let's get a game in,
Right.
So it's that same group of just like people that I see, and
right. I'm trying to think. So I want to make sure that I give a shout out to some of the listeners. There was Edmund, awesome. We completely decided to go against everything. He bought Nightmare Foundations of Stone, and we were like, let's play that. And so that actually went okay. We lost, but it went okay. So Edmund, that's cool. I played with Denizen, or Denison. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, but he's active in the Cardboard of the Rings Discord server. And I forget his real name, so sorry, Denizen. But we played. What's the really hard quest that is slipping my mind that nobody won? The climactic one. Karn Doom. Yeah, we played Karn Doom like 28 times in about 5 minutes. And so
it's tough, right? Because you meet these people, they have their online handles for Discord, and then they have their real names, and then you're trying to remember like one or both.
I know. So, and then I'm not sure. And then Ted, you and I played 2v2 versus Vardane, and his partner, I guess his partner's name was Phil. His name is Steven. I learned that the hard way because I was like, he was talking to me over Facebook and not on Discord, and I was like, which scenario did we lose again? He was talking about losing. He was like, oh, it was great to play with you, even though we lost, and then it was Steven, and I was like, which scenario did we lose again? He was like, no, we lost against you and Ted 2v2. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
To give people some, another great thing about the conventions is you get a chance to play the other formats of the game besides the regular ones. So there was a time set aside for Epic Multiplayer, which unfortunately David and I didn't get to do. Because it was at the same time we were at the offsite event, and then they also held a competitive tournament for people trying to play 3 or 4 rounds, which we got 3 games in of competitive play, David and I. And you just don't usually get to play either of those formats, even if you're online. Just people don't play those formats very often because they're more difficult to do. They require a little more prep work. So these conventions are great for that, and I loved it.
And what I learned was that Ted is an amazing 2v2 player. Like, if there's anything that is going to, if you, okay, every Card Talk listener out there, I brought the team down. If you want a partner to play 2v2, grab Ted Bannock.
Yeah,
He
it was really
loves
funny.
2v2.
All the everyone came up with really creative team names, and then our name was just Card Talk. Everyone else had like really creative names,
Right.
or and we didn't do so hot. We did,
And it was all my fault. It was all my fault.
It was equal responsibility losses. And the competitive format is interesting because you can sort of win or lose by one of two ways. You can win by doing really good, like you go fast, right, and you get through the quest as soon as possible. But you can also win by the other team just like not doing so well, like if they get bogged down by too much.
Right.
And we kind of had a mixture of those scenarios.
Right. And I feel like we were never out of losing any of those, the first two that we played. So, we played and we got to the third stage before they did on both times. And then we just, I'm sorry, not we. I just couldn't perform. So
that was equal part, but it was totally fun. So thanks to, I wish I could remember all of the names of all the opponents besides Vardane.
So it was
Arthur.
So the second one was Wandering, no, not Wandering. Secondhand Took, Mark Bridge, I think his real name is, and Arthur Rao.
Yep.
And I'm not sure who Arthur Rao's real name is, but they did a really good job. Arthur Rao was playing a Sylvan deck that was beefed up, and we came very close to threading them out. In all seriousness, Ted was the one that created the encounter deck, so I can't take really any credit for that. So, but Ted teched the encounter deck, so I have to give him all the credit for that. But so he almost got it to the point where he threaded out the guys. But then the first game, it was Lou and Matt.
Lou and Matt.
Yeah.
Yep. So thanks to our opponents for the games,
Uh,
even though you crushed us. A couple guys crushed us, but it was still super fun.
So Grant, just to give you a little background information, I keep saying how horrible of a player I am and how great of a player Ted is, because I guess it was it the second day of the con or the third day of the con, whatever, in the morning, somebody asked us at breakfast how well we've been doing, and I said, well, I've been doing great, but Ted, he's been horrible. And so I basically blamed all the whoever it was. I think it may have been, was it Joseph in that podcast, the Three's Company podcast? I don't know, whatever it was.
Might have been. Well, and some other friends of mine had come up to me too and said, like, dude, like, what's going on? Like some other people like that same morning had been like, yeah, you're just you're letting everyone down, Ted. So I was getting it from all sides, and I was just like, come on, everyone, what is
right? And so from there, I texted Ted and said, "I'm sorry. I will make sure that I don't disparage your playing anymore, so you don't get any crap from anybody else." So
then it was a sea of compliments from David that apparently haven't ceased yet.
Right. It's just right. It's a C stan of compliments, which is exactly who you play like. You are the C stan of Card Talk, Ted. You're an amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Some of the cool things that happened from a card playing point of view, I wanted to make sure I put these in there. So Ted, you're probably you're old hat at this, but from a card playing point of view, if you never get a chance to play anything other than one or maybe two player, playing 4-player changes your whole perspective on the game. And I'm a pretty smart guy, and I get a lot of the card interactions. But until you actually play a card 4 players, like there are a couple of cards that I feel like are always going to go into my 4-player decks. So I built an Outlands mono leadership Outlands 4-player deck. Okay, and in that deck I put Man the Walls, Campfire Tales, and what's the one that readies every
Strength of Arms.
Strength of Arms. And
That's funny. I had a very similar deck to that. Mono leadership, and I ran those 3 cards.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like Campfire Tales is a card you don't play solo, and you kind of don't play 2-player because it's just not. It's one
Not
to draw
anymore.
one card. There's
When the card pool was smaller and there wasn't much cards in the game, like in the first 2 cycles, I played it often.
Yeah, but
But
at this point you don't really need it. There's too many tricks you can do to accommodate that one draw. But I'll tell you that, when you sit down and you play 4-player and somebody pulls out Campfire Tales and you draw a card, you're like, oh yeah. And man the walls, all of a sudden everybody's reducing the cost of playing their first ally by 1. When you play that the first round, everybody's like, good job, way to go.
yeah.
And so so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, to that point, cards that I had in 2 separate games, somebody played Light the Beacons.
Oh yeah,
Like
we had
someone
that.
was-
You and I had that, didn't we? Have
You
that
and I had
in-
it happen in our game,
Right.
and in a different game, someone else also played Light the Beacons, and it just I don't run it commonly in my decks because it's an expensive card for Spirit especially, but in both games it made I was like, holy crap! Like
Yeah.
now all of a sudden this turn that was going to be junk is just going to be great.
Yeah. What does Light the Beacons do again?
Light the Beacons is the 5 cost Spirit event that all characters get +2 to their defense and don't exhaust to defend.
Right.
And
Right.
what usually happens in 4-player is like someone is playing Barragond. Like between 4 players, there's
Right.
a version of Barragond on the table.
Right. He's just
So-
too good not to have in a deck.
Yeah, because he's Sentinel, he ends up getting the bonus, and then which all the characters do, and then he just Sentinel defends everything without exhausting with his like 8 defense or something he'll have.
Right. Something stupid.
And that works out quite well. So another card that stood out too was which you do see in smaller decks is I think is it our Wrath.
Hour of Wrath, where you
Hour
get
of
to kill
Wrath.
the 4-cost tactics event that kills everything.
Yeah, you pick someone, and regular action is you pick a hero and they don't have to attack or exhaust to defend to
Right.
do either of those actions. And I didn't Valor trigger, but as actually your buddy Chris played it in our Siege of Anuminas game, the last 2 turns of Siege of Anuminas, we Hour of Wrath Barragond to do all the defenses in the last 2 turns.
That's the
It
way
was
to do it.
It was amazing. Yeah. So those experiences are just like they're awesome.
Right.
to see those cards at the table and see the impact they have in a 4-player game.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually Chris played my mono tactics deck. I think
It crushed.
That,
It was
that was
perfect.
just like
It was
like,
perfect for Siege, and Siege is so hard.
I built that deck specifically for like it can't quest for anything. All it can do is Sentinel defend anything.
Yeah, it was. It's
So
Grimbjorn, Barragond, and Eowyn.
Eowyn
all the
tactics,
tactics
right.
versions, all of them.
Right.
Yep.
If you can Hour of Wrath, Eowyn, and use her little party trick, as you call it, like
Yeah.
nothing stands a chance, right? As long as it has ranged on it, right? So, so I think the gameplay really, I guess in my opinion, really is a ton of fun, and there was not a single moment that was tense for me, like with people. Like it got to the point where I was looking around and I said, there's always that guy at a con like this. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm that guy. Like if I can't find that guy, I must be that guy.
Right.
But
If you don't know who your loudest neighbor is, it's you.
right. And so I was, I don't know. Maybe I wasn't that guy. I hope I wasn't that guy. But it's like the total chill central thing. It's just amazing. It's hard to even describe what the heck is the deal with the LOTR community.
Yeah. Question for Grant. Grant, are fellowship events a thing over in your area? Like, are they like a thing? Or are they just like you don't get the content, or do you know what the status is of that?
Well, I went to try and get the. I went forward to try and get the Fellowship of Event, the Woodland Realm,
Mm-hmm.
but they said they'd contact us when they were actually hosting the event, and I'm still waiting for them to contact me.
Okay.
So that's the status.
All right. I just that's good. If over in the UK that they have the content.
They have had the content, but the way I see it is that they're not actually hosting the events; they're just selling them off.
Oh, I see.
Before, for a little bit of extra dough.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Cause the other. Okay. The other component is right, getting the people together to show up and play with, which doesn't always happen at local game stores.
Yeah.
Which will bring me around to another point. We had a few fans of the show just kind of come up and say hi, and that was great.
Yeah. It's totally. You never know. Like, I never know how. Like, if people are actually listening, we get a comment every once in a while on the show, on the YouTube channel, and we love all that. But we don't get 150 comments on our show, or like, you know what I mean. So it's like, I don't know how wildly popular Card Talk is, but it was nice to see a bunch of people were like, "Hey, I know you from the show." I was like, "Oh," and then everybody goes calling me Card Talk Dave. It's like,
yeah,
Dave is fine. Dave is fine. You don't have to call me Card Talk Dave. That's why I picked that handle, so that had my real name in it. It's not like Vardane and Arthurau and Splice and Dennison, whose names I don't even know.
I'm Hippo Boy.
I know you're Hippo Boy,
but
right. I actually had to ask you that when we were hosting the show. I want to ask you a question, Ted, because I think this is pertinent to cards. I think your friends Bob and Chrissy, didn't they play like guarded cards?
Yeah. So another mutual friend of ours, he was unable to attend the event. But to be there in spirit, he had prepared and play tested 3 decks that were built to work in conjunction with each other for us 3 to play. And their strategy was around guarded cards. So there was a mixture of spheres, and they all meant to play the guarded cards and then cross-play them on another person's deck to get the full effect out of it. And it was quite potent.
Has it changed your mind on guarded cards?
We didn't have the opportunity to play all of them, but it has changed my opinion. Yes, I saw a lot of what you were talking about, Grant, where you got to find the right opportunity to play it.
Yeah.
But some new combos came to mind. I'll give my friend credit. A combo I didn't recognize was Eladan with Orcrest.
Oh yeah,
attack
and kill and attack and kill and attack and kill and attack and kill. Sorry, attack, kill, ready, attack, kill, ready, attack, kill.
Yeah,
ready.
And the deck set up Eladan to put on that Orcrest and Glamdring and a Rivendell bow, so he can infinitely attack at ranged and draw a card every time he does it if he kills something.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're interested in taking a look at those decks, he publishes under Mr. Space Bear, and you can find them on Mr. It's a Mr. Space Bear deck. You can, if you search by that name on RingsDB, you'll find them. They're called, I think they say like guarded one of 3 and guarded 2 of 3, and they all have names too. Really clever. So check out those decks.
Yeah. And so, because we're in the midst of our guarded tributes, it was good that you got a chance to play them, and almost without a choice, you were like, "You're going to play this deck," and they were like, "Okie doke."
Yeah, and it is my plan to, and that's what happens when you go to the convention as well. So just in general, you get people, just other players make different choices than you do when you build decks. I've said that before,
right.
And you see it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm not going to put Light the Beacons in my deck, but then someone puts Light the Beacons in their deck, and you're like,
I have to put this in every deck I ever build from here on out.
It's like, I'm so glad you made the decision that I didn't, because it was awesome. It was an awesome decision.
I know. And I still can't figure out the big thing that I'm figuring out, and then we'll move along maybe to a little bit of swag that was handed out. But I still
we can touch on the strag and the structure too. I want to talk about as well.
Okay, well, I can't figure out if there's more space in 4-player or less space in 4-player to make mistakes. Like, I feel like the encounter deck hits a lot more, but I also feel like there's more players to. Maybe it's the same but different. You know, maybe you can still make mistakes, but it's different the way that people make up for those mistakes.
Yeah,
I don't know.
When I play multiplayer, meaning 3 or 4, it requires a lot. It's more effort for sure, because in order to really be efficient, you have to plan and discuss a lot of what everyone's going to do. Like, I've played in multiplayer games before, where every single player has a sentinel character and would engage an enemy, and no one would block their own attack. So even though I had an enemy, it was beneficial for me to use my blocker to sentinel defend someone else, even though they also had...
Defend, Ted. It's defend.
I said defend. Did I say block again?
Yeah. That's a holdover from the con.
Yeah. David was giving me a hard time about terminology, game terminology.
Right.
So that part of it is a little exhausting when you're constantly like, okay, all right, we got like 4 enemies, 6 enemies. Who's going to option what? Who's going to block what? Who can kill what? And you got to start doing the math and then thinking about abilities and then cards in your hand. And it requires a great amount of team effort. But when you accomplish it, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. It's. I also found that I didn't have to know the encounter deck much. I didn't use a single one of my encounter decks to play any of the stuff. People were pulling me off into games, and I'd be like, "Great, set it up. I'll be over in a minute." and so I found that my knowledge of the encounter deck didn't have to be as fast as when I'm playing alone, you know. And then as long as I'm playing something that I can react to the encounter deck with, I'm, you know, like my Mono Tactics defend everything deck, I can be like, yeah, I'll take that for you. It's no problem, you know. So I don't know. But what were you going to say? You said you had a couple of things you wanted to talk about, structure and.
So the Free Men of the North, the whole team that put that together, I just want to thank and commend them again for all the work they put into it, and putting together a really great experience for me as well as everyone who went. I think enjoyed themselves, and part of that was they set up a general structure to kind of play. They had the time to decide for certain quests. They had time to decide for the epic play event, and they printed that on a schedule, as well as a little off-site party they had for people to get together and just do something different and chat and play other games and have something to eat. So that was a real great aspect to kind of have everything like, so if you don't know like what to do, you know, there's some general structure to follow, so it's really easy to find what is going on, basically.
Yeah, and I appreciated that, because if you know, as you're meeting people, you're like, what do you want to play? And they look up the board, we'll play across the Entmoors because that's what we're doing, right? You know, like, seems to be a thing, you know. And there's always achievements to be won, so that makes it nice to, you know.
Yeah, I found out about their achievement system, which was pretty great, which I'll just briefly mention is they would develop certain very difficult things to do during a quest, and if you could accomplish that and still win the quest, you could sign your name that you completed the achievement. I'm trying to remember some of them. One I remember off the top of my head was to do one of the sailing quests in the Dream Chaser cycle. I don't know which one, if it was if it was the Stormcaller, Flight of the Stormcaller, or one of the earlier ones. But one of the achievements was to fail every single sailing
Oh
test.
yeah. I think that was Flight of the Stormcaller. Like you just couldn't pass a sailing test. That's like impossible.
And it makes the quest so much harder to do.
I know,
but
because it
it's
triggers
like,
all those stupid effects that happen on those cards.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. But it's another fun way where you're like, I would never think to sit down and play. Like, I'm just gonna fail the sailing test and see if I can win.
right.
I would never think to do that
right.
myself.
The one I only won a couple. I think I won 3 all weekend. I wasn't trying this time around. I was just trying to play. But the one I beat was a universal achievement where we all played mono tactics decks, and we beat. Was it Raid on the Grey Havens? I don't know. There was a whole bunch of ships catching on fire. I think that's
Yeah,
Raid
I think
on
I
the
saw
Grey-
you playing
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, and I wish
so every
so-
single player
so-
every single player had to play the same sphere.
Right. So there was 3 tactics decks going against it. So fortunately, one of the guys had like a Theoden deck, and but so it was fine in terms of questing. But I do want to say this: whoever I played that with, I want to remember your name so badly. I see the picture, the Con of the Rings picture. Please, if I played the mono tactics deck Raid on the Grey Havens with you, I just want to know your name. Please make a comment, send an email to cardtalk2018@gmail.com somehow, just so I know your name. It's driving me nuts. So I wanted to make sure that I put that out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, please, anyone, just continue to reach out to us. Send us an email, comment on Facebook. We really appreciate that kind of stuff. Any suggestions you have, cards you want us to cover for normal Card Talk episodes, that'd be great.
What else did you have before I go over the swag that was around, right? You said you wanted to talk about structure and something else.
Yeah, just the schedule, just for people who
right.
Who couldn't attend, just to know if they are able to come next year. They're able to go.
Official announcement, I think, is that it's going to be October 2nd through 4th. So Grant, start putting your pennies in the pences, not your pennies, your pences in a jar, and see if you can do that. Card Talk, get your patron money in there, and then if we get enough, we'll fly Grant over to Con of the Rings next year, right? So maybe just a little bit about swag. A couple of things that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out was, first thing, even though it's Gen Con, I did get Gen Con swag. I did get the Cardboard of the Rings encounter mat, and that was amazing to play with, just to help control, how much you're questing for and things like that.
Yeah, those guys, that whole crew did a tremendous job with creating that piece and handing it out. It's very beautiful and practical.
And it comes with 4 wooden rings. So, there's a ring that just went into my daughter's drink. But there's like a encounter ring and a ring of Barahir. Or
did you just emulate like casting the one ring into Mount Doom?
into Mount Doom, right? And this is
into Mount Drink.
Into Mount Drink, right? There's a dwarven ring, and then there's an elven ring that is dripping wet. But then what they did is they offered another ring for people who showed up at the con. So you get this.
I did not see that, nor did I get it. That is unfortunate.
Oh man, maybe you'll see those guys at some point.
Oh.
So anyways, so there was a 5th ring that you could get at the con. That was pretty cool. But and then I also got on top of that, I got the next 2v2 thing, which with the alt art Bilbo, but this was the playmat that came with that so that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that one's part of the FFG, sort of the Gen Con
the Gen
event
Con,
they held,
right?
that this past Gen Con, part of the Mines of Moria kit.
Right. So that was swag that I received at the con. And then Dan Prince over at Vision of the Palantir, he made up these things. So he gave, for any of his patrons, you can go to his Patreon page and support him. He made a set of 7 patches. So these patches, I'm gonna get a nice deck box and put these patches on there. And so, Grant, you probably know this better than I do, but there's a whole bunch of Palantir around Middle Earth that helped. What was the deal with the Palantir, Grant? What's the how many?
Well, there were the seeing stones of Numenor. The men of Numenor used them to communicate throughout the entire of Middle Earth, going from the far north in Fornost right the way down to Minas Morgul, as it's now known. There was 7 Palantirs so that they could organize quickly to either send aid or resources around Middle Earth.
Yeah, and so,
Wow. Grant, I'm really glad you're here for that kind of stuff.
Right, and so that's pretty cool that he had those printed up, and so I personally support Vision of the Palantir because it's such a great thing. So I get his swag, and then I met Beorn in person, Dan Pogue, who's been on the show, and he handed out some alt art cards. So a Gandalf and a Loyal Hound, and of course a giant bear that he's got to play, and then Drinking Song. So he handed out some alt art cards to me, and then Splice. He he has a Bob Rossiel card and then a foil Brossiel card, which is a play on Rossiel the elf. It's got her text on it, but his picture. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then I think the best swag was if you were a Con of the Rings participant, you just got these deck boxes. Solid wood.
That came from the event organizers.
Yeah. So the solid wood, like there's a player box here. This is for player decks, and this is for encounter decks. It says on the side, and then it's solid wood. So if you want to open this thing, you just push it forward. It's got no metal hinge on it. It just opens right up that way. So it's like a super stylish I don't know, it's deck box. I've never seen anything like this. So that's pretty cool. And then last but certainly not least, I will make sure that I show this. So all our patrons this year got this fancy first player token, and it was just my way of saying thank you to everybody who has contributed to the show. And I gave one to Ted. He didn't know it was coming. I tried to give one to Grant, but the customs officials stole it. And also another one of our patrons, Phil. Phil, thanks for being a patron. His gets stolen too out of the envelope. So they each got their card, but they didn't get the envelope or the Card Talk first player token. So this is the way that we commemorated Con of the Rings. It says first player token on the front, and then on the back it says Con of the Rings 2019. And of course it's a poker chip, so what better way to have a poker chip than what it says, what have I got in my pocket? So I thought that was a lot of thought went into that.
That was a very nice thing for you to put together, David. I much appreciate it. And at least once in the con, if you remember, I took it out of my pocket. I was like, what is in my pocket?
I know. Actually,
first player token.
Yeah. Actually, that particular instance was really, really made me feel good. All joking aside, it was really neat that you did that because that's exactly what I was hoping for, that somebody would be like, oh, what have I got in my, it's this first player token, and then people now have first player token that they can bring. It's kind of funny.
So it's on my table, and Grant, yours is checks in the mail, buddy.
Right. Somebody else is playing Lord of the Rings with his first player token. Or not.
I hope it brings them bad luck.
Yeah, right. I hope so too. So what else do we have as we finish up our, I guess, great things come in threes, right? So we had a couple of shows that we recorded at the con, and then there's this show, which is their post-con. So what other things do we have to talk about before we wrap it up?
I got nothing.
Well, there was quite a few other side events too. I'll just mention real briefly. There was a trivia contest that was also hosted by Cardboard of the Rings, and then you yourself, David, you got to host the designer interview, which was published also already on our feed. So if you guys haven't checked those videos out yet, or that specific one, that's available.
Yeah, that just for anybody who's super interested in it, that's the one. The designer interview is the one where Grant doesn't talk. It's the one where Caleb talks about the infamous break and what is going on with that. So that's kind of a must listen if you're involved in the community somehow. One other thing that I do want to mention that came out of Con of the Rings that's not a direct thing because of Con of the Rings, but it came out of it, is that I met Dan Pogue, Hall of Beorn, right? And so Hall of Beorn, he's always looking at ways to expand his card search engine, right? And so one of the things that happened is he said he wants to start putting community content on card search pages. And so Dan and I reached out and we got talking, and he said that my episodes, not mine, just my episodes of Card Talk, our episodes of Card Talk. I'm very possessive of this thing here. He said that
you can be. You started it. It's fine. We're fine with it.
Yeah. He said that it's super easy to put our podcast onto there. So if you search any card in Hall of Beorn, and as long as we've done an episode, it pops up on the details page.
Wow.
So
okay.
Another way to look and see what we've done. And you can, if you go to Aragorn, it's got a couple of links to, the Aragorn, and then our episode that we did on which Aragorn to pick. And then if you go to Galadriel's page, it pops up Caleb Grace's interview page. So, it's kind of neat. So thanks to Dan, and it was awesome meeting you at the con. And I'll say it one more time: he's way taller than I thought he was going to be.
That's the impression everyone gets. Right? That's you and I had like, oh, they're taller than I thought they'd be.
Yeah. Right. I'm also weirder than you thought I was going to be, but that's
definitely. Yep.
That was
absolutely
whatever.
10 times as
Right.
much as I thought. So just to mention, he said just a note about Card Talk. Even though the game is going to be taking a hiatus, or whatever they want to call it, we'll still be pumping out episodes for all the cards we haven't yet talked about. So we got a whole card pool to go through, and I guess until we reach the finish line, we're going to keep going.
And there's also community content that's busy being devised as we are currently speaking.
Yeah.
C-Stan's got his own little project going on with members of the community, and obviously myself and Samuel Shreve have the Ancient Madlands project going on. So there is content coming
Right.
for the game.
Yes, and also a piece of news that was sent to me just today. I think it was announced just today recently.
Beep, 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 beep. Breaking news. Beep, 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 beep.
I'd mentioned, Grant had asked you before about the fellowship event. They announced, so there isn't going to be a fellowship event for 2019. That has been pushed back into either Q1 or Q2 of 2020. If I can pull up the article.
I think it's May of 2020 is what
that
I
might
had.
be what it is. But it was a very recent announcement.
Yes. And it's going to be the second half of the Moria thing. Right.
Yeah, sort of. Yep. So it's just Q2 of 2020.
Right.
So that will be some new content as well coming out to finish throughout the other half of the competitive mode for the Moria setting.
Right. So, whew. What else do we have then? Okay.
Just con on.
Con
Con on you? Yes, you con.
Yes, you con. Oh, man. It wouldn't be a show without Ted wrapping up with some sort of strange pun.
But yeah,
So.
these events are great. I'm so glad I was fortunate enough to go, and thanks again for all the players that I got to play games with, and for everyone that I spoke to and shared those experiences with. And I just, I have a couple of, I value all the games, but there's like some key ones that I'm like forever going to remember, like just that were so awesome to play.
Yeah.
So I look forward to having some more of those experiences next time I see you guys.
It'll be a lot of fun. So having said all that, let's call it a day. And everybody, you can join us again next time as we talk about more content from around the community. Have a great day. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.